Yo, what's going on, y'all? Magnif. I'm here to break down some frames. This is the thing that I do to make a little bit of change for those out there looking to get into this frame of type of work that you're trying to get into. Anyways, about to break down some scenes and basically talk about it from my point of view. Why do I do this? When entering filmmaking, I didn't have this perspective. And I feel like when you kind of look at things these type of way, you're able to basically unlock different avenues of your minds and of your creativity. And I want the new guys, the new heads, the new girls and boys or whatever to be able to just do this thing a lot more simply, get into it a lot easier. So all right, let's go. These are the frames that I'm going to talk about. Let's talk about this one first. All right, we have a dark-skinned subject, girl looking straight down to the camera. This is a very, very wide lens because of the ordination of her head. You see how it's kind of like curving? It's not as flat. It's kind of like warped. It's like small. It's narrow. That's how you know it's like if it's a wide lens or not. Anyway, so right now, instantly what I see is we are in a yes, so we have a cloudy day. This is an overcast. What does overcast mean? That's when the cloud is blocking the sun. We don't see immediate harsh sunlight coming from the sky. So in these scenarios, you can actually put your camera up to the sky without any of your colors getting blown out. Now, the beautiful thing about overcast, it just gives you a full soft light all across the board. Everything gets an even type of feel of light everywhere, on her skin, on the buildings, on everything. And the luminance in the frame are not that harsh. Now, granted, they're still doing a little bit of magic here. So her face is looking straight down to the camera. Now, there's not a huge eye light, but you can kind of look at her. So this is our right, the right side of her eyeballs. You can see a little bit of thing glittering. That might just be the lens. That's what I'm guessing it is, the lens. But you can kind of see the different contrasts that are basically moving around her face. You see how this right section right here is a lot darker and this left section is a lot lighter. So that goes to show you they're putting some type of negative feel there to just turn down the intensity on that side of her face so you can create contrast. If they weren't able to do that, everything would have just been the same intensity all across her face, which is not the beauty of cinematic. We're trying to create dark to light, dark to light. And the best way to do that is taking away light from one part of the place and letting it feel free at another side of the place. So now you see this little dark section in the middle, kind of right side of her face. But as we go to the edges, we have this soft light all the way to her left. That's basically the ambient light. That's basically the ambient light is basically the light in the environment. But the light all the way to the side, you can tell it's a lot harsher. They're probably shooting something back at her face just to create a little bit of highlight to just pop out the skin. You see how that little glitter, that little glam on the side, on the right side of her face is giving you a little bit of pop. Again, they're probably reflecting a hard light straight to her face just to create a different atmosphere, just create a field of light on her face. You see the different temperature of light on this, on the far left. There's a different temperature of light in the middle, and there's a different temperature of light on the far right. So again, create that type of experience on every frame that you're trying to create in your career. And then there's times that you don't want to do it. But again, you always had to have that trick bag. You always look for that if you're a DP, if you're a cinematographer. Look for how you can create adjustments of light on your subjects and in your environment. Now, it's great that we have this overcast because overcast, you're never fighting the sun. As we proceed to give you what you need. So this one, again, we have another beautiful overcast day. So this is why the camera is pointing towards the sky, because it's a safe place. We can get as creative as we want. We can actually bring in lights on the outside to create different structures of light in our environment. So I love how they're shooting into the mirror and the mirror is watching her. So this is basically the framework. Just as interesting perspectives to bring about different elements from the subjects to the viewer. So we have the glass, which is one element. Then we have the reflection, which is another element, which we have her face, which is another element. And I love how they put this car kind of in the foreground, background. So the side of the car, that's the door, is more towards the camera, and towards the front of the car is more towards the background. I love the greenery right behind the rear view mirror, just to create a little bit of of just texture, and we see how we can see even the trees behind the windshield in this window. All these things are done on purpose. This is magical. Now we have soft light coming on her skin all across. Nothing's overblown, nothing's overly bright, but we can tell on the right side of her face it's a lot darker than the left side of her face. So they're probably reflecting some light right back into her. So when you're looking at it, you can see the separation. I always call it two-facing. Figure out how you can split the face straight down and create dark to light, dark to light. So we have dark to light to dark to dark to light. So all these things are elements that you must look for when you're creating your cinematic frames. This is great. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. Things that you may not consider. See this little fabric right behind her head? That's purposeful. Again, that's just breaking it up. It's creating a different type of texture. You see these little holes, stop, like, I don't know, what do we call these? Like buttons, like push button things for clothing. I don't even know what they're called. And I love how the background is peeking through the back windshield right across her head, because that little bit of light back there separates her from the background, which creates a different element that makes her stick out on the frame. As we proceed, beautiful stuff. Again, so this is another overcast day, but this overcast day is kind of like on, what do we call this? The golden hour. So this is probably later in the day, like around 6 o'clock when the sun's coming down, because when the sun is giving you that goldness, that richness is really, really good. Now, granted, if the trees weren't there, this is probably unsafe. So just because the trees are in front of the sun, it's just basically breaking it up all across the board, which gives you this level-headed type of light atmosphere. Because if the trees were gone, we'd just see sun and everything would be blown out. So since the trees are basically acting as our repellent to break up the intensity, we have this even kill type of light. I love the fog that they're putting down here to just bring up the dust, which brings about a different atmosphere. Now you can see on the left side of this frame how you see all this dust coming up and is giving a little bit of fogginess as they kick up. This is quite even, so it's a lot easier to create contrast with your shot on a wide shot, because ultimately if you're backlighting everything, you're ultimately safe. So these people are probably semi-silhouetted, maybe like 30%, but it's not silhouetted in darkness, but you can ultimately see the most intense light is coming on the other side of them. That's why you can see this luminance like on the edge of their hair and their skin and their shirts and their bodies. So, and they're wearing, this girl's wearing very, very rich colors, really bright colors that really puts her across with this green. Color palette was done. They knew where they were going to be and they knew what they were going to do. And I like him, he has a more neutral tone stuff, but again, it doesn't match the trees, causes it to basically stand out away from the background. So imagine if it was green and it was like too brown, we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But the easiest way to tell the difference between your frame is put the light behind them. So whenever you put light behind your subject, you're automatically making them pop out at the viewer, at the consumer, at the watcher. So this is great stuff. I love the texture. I love the atmosphere. I love the fog. I like the dust. I like the leaves, all that stuff. Great stuff. Beautiful. And again, like I said, the reason why this is overcast is because the tree is blocking the sun, which is breaking the sun all across, which is giving this even tone. But you can still see the sun in the middle of the frame kind of peeking through. So I still think this camera probably has some ND on it, but it's probably not too high that it's overblowing. So this is your typical, what you see on a late overcast day. Everything here is even. Now, I would say this is a flat shot. Why do I say flat? You cannot see a distinct difference between the skin tone, the background, and the environment. But we can see a slight color shift on the right side of his face, being as though they're probably reflecting just a little bit of light right back at him, kind of on the low end, because you can kind of see it in the bottom of his chin and a little bit on his collar. But just enough just to make it a little interesting. This is probably one of those shots that are probably not standing too long, but you can even see a little bit of the highlight on his nose as it's ringing. Now, granted, since they're shooting this with a long lens, because of the amount of the whole background is out of focus, and I can tell this building has been compressed. It's so close to him, and it's probably not. It's probably a lot further. But since they're using a long lens, being able to focus him so well, the lens is actually starting to create your detachment. It's starting to create the 3D effect that separates the subject from the background. Now you can do this, but you don't have to do it all the time. But if you're going to use a long lens and you just want to have a very focused shot with your subject, use a long lens. But they still try to separate it with a little bit of light, kicking right back up to him. But everything else is consistently the same temperature and the same tone all across the board. So technically speaking, this is a flat shot, but it still makes it just because of that little bit of highlight on his nose and a little bit of reflected light that's coming right underneath his chin. All right. So yeah, man, that's basically it. How I basically break down these 4 frames real quick. So again, if you're coming into this cinematic film type of realm, understand, try to create texture, try to create environment, try to create dark to light spots within every frame that you shoot. It creates more interest, it creates more excitement, creativity, and the eyes tend to like to see light stuff and dark stuff, just to keep it simple as hell. So we're talking overcast, when we have a cloudy day outside and everything is even, which makes it a lot easier. Still bring in your light, try to create a little bit of excitement, a little bit of glare, a little bit of gloss on the skin, on the background, just to give it a little bit more pop. So until next time, there'll be your next time. See you next time. Deduce. Hope you learned something. There you go.